Anthony Castrovince of MLB.com is joining us here on the Morning Run. Anthony, Happy New Year, first of all. Secondly, what can you tell us? Where is Jose Bautista going to be signing and when?
Well, I wish I knew. I think he wants to know at this point. But it's been one of those markets that's been difficult, been challenging for him because this is a guy who obviously not long ago was one of the elite bats in the game. But he's coming off of a season where he's had some injury trouble. He had performance regression. There's been a kind of a natural, given his age, there's been kind of a natural regression in his defensive metrics. And, you know, being tied to the draft pick compensation and the proliferation of those right-handed slugging bats has hurt him. But, you know, it's just been a challenge to find the exact right fit. I think he could be – it makes the most sense that the Blue Jays, just because they still have a need in the outfield and they don't have to give up a draft pick to sign him, of course, for him to return to the Blue Jays maybe on a short-term contract. But there's other possibilities that involve teams that aren't caught up in the draft pick compensation issue because they don't have to give up a first-rounder. I'm talking about teams with protected first-round pick like the Phillies or the Rays. So we'll see. But it's just been a really frustrating year for him, I'm sure, because a year ago he's having extension talks with the Blue Jays and floating, you know, gigantic numbers that just aren't possible for him at this point.
Well, the Phillies are reportedly interested in Joey Bats, and we talked about his age. Phillies having a little bit of a youth movement. Would that be smart for that Phillies team?
Well, possibly. So what it boils down to there is the possibility of, you know, maybe flipping him down the road or at the very least having a more veteran presence, you know, to go along with Howie Kendrick and to help some of these young bats mature at the big league level. But the problem with that is potentially blocking some playing time and you know, some guys who are going to be a big part of their future wouldn't get the at-bats they'd get otherwise. So that's something they're weighing right now. But, you know, if the price tag keeps falling, and again, they have that protected first-round pick, it might make sense as a guy who adds a veteran presence there. And again, maybe particularly if it's a short-term deal, if it's a one-year deal, it could make a tremendous amount of sense as a potential option to flip at the trade deadline. But, you know, a multi-year deal, that's a little trickier because I think the one thing that the Phillies have done such a good job of is really clearing the books beyond 2017. They have really no major financial obligations to speak of. And we've talked about this before, and they're going to be set up nicely for those improved free agent classes down the road, particularly the class after 2018. So, you know, to take away playing time from Quinn and Alther and then there's other young guys that are going to be coming up and infiltrate the big league roster this season is a tricky thing because I think ultimately it's in the Phillies' best interest to see what they have in those guys.
I mean, at this point, why not just go out there and tell every team, we'll take a one-year deal, and we just want to play and prove that we can either get another contract or go play for a contender later this year?
Yeah, it could get to that point, honestly. You know, there's tremendous value in that, and especially if it's in place. I mean, Philly would be a tremendous place for him to rebuild his value just because of the nature of that ballpark. Tampa Bay maybe less so because it's not as hitter-friendly, but it is close to home for him. He lives in that area, so you know, a lot of things to weigh there. And the Blue Jays, you know, that's the comfortable fit, and then the fan base loves him, of course, but you know, they just might, honestly, they might end up pursuing better defensive options for their corner outfield. So it's a fascinating one because we're talking about one of the premier players in the game, and but he's also a somewhat divisive player, you know. And he had Dan Duquette saying at the winter meetings that we're not going to sign him because our fans hate him. You know, there's some of that element with Bautista because he does rub some people the wrong way. I think ultimately when it comes down to dollars and cents and potential impact, you kind of ignore that stuff. And I think the fans will embrace him quite a bit if he can get to his old offensive level. But yeah, it could be a situation where a one-year deal makes the most sense.